Hi everyone, it's Darren here. I've got a new webcam and I'm doing an update about Mirvaso and laser, PDL, pulse-dye laser, for those of you that were asking. I last made a video about PDL in, when was it, July 2018. That was when I last had a full face laser. Summertime is not the best time to have something like that done. Prefer to do that in winter, really. There's less sunlight outside, there's less chance of regressive results. I was wearing my sunscreen, however, and I'm wearing this now. Whenever you have this is the one I'm using, Garnier it is. I got this on Amazon. It's about £5 or £6, SPF 50, formulated for sensitive skin. So it's particularly important to wear this right after your treatment, but in the months that follow, and indeed forever actually. So how did I recover from my treatment? Well, let me just go back to July 2018. I had that, and right afterwards it was looking pretty good, but there were areas that were missed. I could see that there were areas, particularly on this side of the face, where because the laser missed, that sometimes when I still get hot and flushed, or if I eat something which doesn't agree with me, there's redness, what you call transient erythema, and amongst all that redness I can see little white circles where the laser hit, because it's a spot treatment. I asked my laser technician what wavelength he was using, and he said 565. That's 565 nanometers. I'm not sure whereabouts in the colour spectrum that is. That's not pure red, that's much lower down. 630 is more like pure red. Later on that year I had IPL, that's intense pulsed light. That's multiple wavelengths covering all of the face. So it's not like spot treatments. This covers everything, but the effect is subtler. So as with any light-based skin treatment, you need to have several of them to see results. I've just had the one IPL, which really is a very piecemeal approach, and the reason is I can't really afford any more at the moment. I mean, all this stuff has crippled me financially, and I really need to try and exhaust some other options before I return to PDL and IPL. The problem I find with PDL is that although it's effective, it is so aggressive that it leaves a punched out effect. You've got these little circles quite often. It can be like an inverse polka dot effect. Do you know what Ben-Day dots are? It was a style used in pop art in the 60s, where everything's made up of little dots, which when you look further away, it just looks like a solid colour, but get close and you can see it's like circles, or it's like the inverse of that, The reason when you have PDL that they leave gaps is because if you've requested the high bruising settings, that they can't risk any of these spot treatments overlapping, because if they do, that will mean that you get double the power being used on those areas where it overlaps, like where those spots converge. That can cause scarring, fat loss, atrophy. You've got to be careful with this stuff. So quite often they will err on the side of caution and leave the gaps. You have to wait for a while, and then when you can see what has and hasn't recovered, you can go back and have those pockets of leftover remaining redness dealt with. Of course, you want to ideally do it in winter, because if it's cold, in my country it's cold out, and I like to try and stay outside for as long as possible right before my treatment, and then try and get into the laser theatre as quickly as possible, so that the minute I go into that warm room, my blood vessels start to dilate, and then you can see which bits need to be treated. As I say, these remaining pockets, and it is mainly on this side around the temple. Whenever I have PDL, I take pictures and videos of myself and I hang on to them, and I actually show my like my PDL technician, this is what I had done last time. So with that in mind, when I ask you what I'm about to ask you to do, you know that it's with good reason. I even showed when I had IPL, with my doctor who does, a different doctor who does intense pulse light, I was saying, look at how my face was treated with, I was showing him my phone, my video. I was saying, can you see where I've got gaps there? Look at the gaps. Well, now look here, and can you see those gaps? And he said, yes, I can see them. I don't know if you can see them on this camera. I bet you can't, because I've actually got sunscreen on. This has got titanium dioxide in it, which has a slightly whitening effect and therefore evens things out a bit. So you probably can't tell. But you know, if I went and did an hour of aerobics and then ate a curry and then went out in the cold and then came back and sat here, and then you'd see it, I guarantee it. But if you can't see it, that's not such a bad thing, because I don't really want you to be able to see it. I want it to get better. But, you know, it does get bad when I'm triggered by certain stimuli, certain environmental factors. What was I going to say to you? One thing I have been doing is looking into topicals that contain actives with a capital A, meaning the more sort of heavy-duty medicated topicals that a derm would prescribe, not Mirvaso, not Brimonidine gel, because that is a quick short-term fix which does no good in the long term, and Brimonidine isn't even meant to put on the skin. Brimonidine is for fucking glaucoma, people with those eye problems. And yeah, so Mirvaso was short-term, made me had terrible rebounds, and it would have created angiogenesis, which is where you get the regrowth, the sudden regrowth of those blood vessels that are nearer to the epidermis. So I want to be really looking at something which is long-term rather than this short-termism, which is frankly wrong-headed and irresponsible. So if your dermatologist wants to give you Mirvaso, do not use it. Do not. And if you do, dilute it with like a moisturizer and just use it on one part of your skin and see how it goes. Do not slather it onto your cheeks and nose as I did, because I trusted my dermatologist and I wish I hadn't. So I've been looking into some YouTube channels, and there are, you know, other things that you can use like azelaic acid, salicylic acid, niacinamide. Those three actives can actually be bought over the counter. So if you wanted, you don't necessarily need to get any of that on prescription. I have been using salicylic acid on my forehead because salicylic acid is actually found in aspirin. You can grind aspirin to a fine powder and then mix it with a carrier like aloe vera, alcohol-free, manuka honey, even what do they call it, bentonite clay, which is a good delivery system for topicals like that. But I've got acne anyway on my forehead, and there's background redness there, and azelaic acid sort of serves a dual purpose of diminishing papules and pustules, acne, blemishes, and the redness that goes along with it. So what I intend to do is I'll be visiting my GP this afternoon. I'll be explaining all of this. I guess I'll be providing instructions rather than asking for advice. Arrogant as that sounds. I'll be saying, look, I want to try Phoenacia. I know it's a 15% formulation of azelaic acid. I'll be buffering it with an alcohol-free moisturizer. I intend to use it 3 times a week on my forehead. I want to build up some tolerance to it and see how I go. A skin cycle takes 6 weeks. So if I was to say use that stuff for 3 months on my forehead and then go back and see him or her, then we'll know how I'm getting on. But during that time, during that 12 weeks of azelaic acid use on the forehead, I might be able to start using it on the nose where I've got some redness still, especially on the sides. Also on the temple on this side. Also on the jawline and the what do they call it? The beard area, the sideburn area. I want to see if I can start using this stuff long term and reduce some of the redness, because azelaic acid, well, Phoenacia was always sort of rolled out as like an acne remedy, but over time it's been seen to act as a skin bleaching agent and to deal with redness. Then I can maybe introduce niacinamide, which is anti-inflammatory. Niacin is vitamin B3. Take it internally. Niacin can actually cause blushing. It's been known to do that. I don't take a lot of B3. I take the B complex internally, but I want to see what niacinamide can do for my skin topically. But do make sure you always wear your sunscreen. Remember the hierarchy of needs. You know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Think of the hierarchy of skincare needs. Laser and IPL is at the top, and most people often go straight to that because they see it as like a quick fix. You know, if you do need to do that, you know, do that. It's helped me, but bear in mind that you've got your diet and your sunscreen. Azelaic acid is a dicarboxylic acid. So I'm interested to see what I can do with that. You can't buy it over the counter. If your GP or physician won't give you Finacea, they might be able to give you an off-brand azelaic acid at 15%, but you can get it over the counter, 10%. A brand called The Ordinary do something that contains azelaic acid. There used to be a doctor called Dr. Peter Crouch who sadly passed away. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I've done a lot of research, and there's a website that I go to called rosaceagroup.org, I think it is. There's a forum that is sort of part of that website, and there's a sub-forum called Laser. I think it's PDL and IPL. It's a sub-forum of the rosacea forum, and there's some sticky threads on there, which means they've been sort of pinned to the top of the forum, and one of them was a Q&A with Dr. Peter Crouch, a GP who had a specialist interest in rosacea because he himself had rosacea, and he was a practitioner of PDL and IPL. And the person who I had IPL with in November 2018, I'd one treatment with him. I bought up Dr. Peter Crouch. He went, "Oh yeah, I know Pete. Yeah, he's a rosacea king." And I had to break the bad news to him that Dr. Peter Crouch had sadly passed away and was no longer with us. It was interesting to know that he'd worked under the tutelage of Dr. Peter Crouch. And there are some Q&As going back as far as, well, from what I can remember, 2011, but even further back than that. Dr. Peter Crouch was also saying that because PDL, pulsed-dye laser, is so aggressive, or vBeam as it's known, that's the brand name, it can often make blood shunt to the sides rather than necessarily going back, and that's because the technicians can't risk an overlap of, you've got gaps, but if they overlap, slightly like that, that bit where they converge, you're going to get scarring and irreparable damage, atrophy and all that sort of stuff. IPL, I find, operates on multiple wavelengths, and it's kind of got this sort of feathering, softening effect. I had one IPL when what happened was I got like a purging of I don't know if it was bacteria coming out of the pores or whether it was pigment, but I got all these little pinhead sized scabs all over the face, loads of them all over. You couldn't have left the house looking like that. It looked bizarre, and it took a good 2 weeks for these things to finish, sort of purging, and they eventually dropped off. They started off red and sort of turned black, and then they dropped off. And in all the areas that they dropped off, there was like a little area of blanched white skin. So although I'd had blanched white skin from the PDL, so whenever I went red, you'd see these little circles. Well, with the IPL, they were even smaller than that. They were like speckles, and I knew that if I had more of that, you'd be adding more and more speckles of blanched white skin to my overall complexion. So that would eventually create like a feathering effect. And you do need to have multiple treatments, really. But I do worry about, fat loss and all that. So I'm trying to exhaust some other options before I return to light-based skin treatments. I did have a pretty bad flush recently in a really hot room, like a really bad flush. And the next day I had... I don't know, you probably can't see it again because of the light. I need to really get up in sunlight. Can't see it, can you? But I have got a patch here, which is new. It's like a new patch of redness. But every night I've been mixing a few drops of tea tree with my moisturiser, which is alcohol free, and rubbing it all over my face. You get like a very slight tingling effect, but I want to see long term if that sort of takes down redness and what have you. I've also been using apple cider vinegar, heavily diluted, 1 part vinegar to 10 parts water, spraying that onto my forehead as a toner. I might eventually start using that on my face, but I am worried about contact dermatitis, and that could actually exacerbate any redness. So I'm proceeding very, very carefully, much more carefully than my idiotic dermatologist who back in 2017 gave me that fucking Mirvaso shit to put on my face. So I just hope that I can eventually get my baseline back to what it was, because I know you can't really tell, but I've got areas of skin that are constricted and parts which are not, and the parts that are not are the parts that go quite red in certain situations. Alright, so that's long enough. Bye for now. Cheers.